Yeah, friends, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I have prepared quite a long statement, which you have read. I think take it as delivered. So feel free to quote in full or in parts as you deem fit. But I thought I would run through some quite important charts, which I'll show to you to explain, because the subject itself can be quite complicated. And I thought I'll go through slowly with you to make sure you fully grasp what it's all about. 2 days ago, when we met at Seletar Airport, I focused on the air, and I thought this afternoon I'll focus on this Johor Bahru port limits. So can we have chart 1? Yeah. This is a very old map which Malaysia produced unilaterally, without consultation, in 1979. Do we have a pointer so I can... sorry. Okay. So this is a chart, as I said, that Malaysia produced unilaterally without consultation. This was in 1979. This is the map where, for the first time, remember, they claim Petra Blanca. We objected to this map. We protested through TPN. We objected to not just only Petra Blanca, but also because the boundaries that they draw on the eastern and the western end of entrance of Singapore, we objected. And specifically on the western side, it encroached into our port limits, and we protested. So let me take you through what this map shows. This is southern part of Johor. This is, of course, not a full map. This is just that corner of Tuas View. This is the reclamation profile that we intend eventually for our Tuas mega hub, mega port. Yeah, we are just work in progress. Just done part of it. Yeah. The red line was the boundary on what they call it, the Johor Straits, between Johor and Singapore. And this was an agreed boundary line between Malaysia and Singapore. And this was agreed in 1995. So this is a confirmed boundary. And then for completeness, on the south, we also have an agreed line, boundary line with Indonesia. The one, this part in blue. This was agreed quite early in 1973, and more recently in 2009, we completed also this boundary settlement with Indonesia. Now in 1979, Malaysia on their own claimed for this part their boundary. And it is in a very odd shape that got into this one and then continue on further south. So we objected, we protested against this boundary, even today, so never resolved. But I wanted to show is to say that this is on their own. This is what they think their boundary ought to be like. And meaning, so if you agree with them, then on the left-hand side, this is Malaysian waters. And of course, on the right-hand side of this claim line, obviously Singapore water. So that is the significance of this map. We never agree with what they draw, but anyway, even if we accept what they draw, this is the boundary. So this is chart number 1. Chart 2, please. Yeah. Chart 2, I wanted to show the Johor Bahru port limits. Let me first explain what are port limits. Because many countries, they have ports. Like in Malaysia, they have several ports. In our case, we just have PSA. But in Malaysia, there are several ports. And then for them, so that the ports know which are my areas, which are my work, where the ships park, where the ships do things, bunkering, transfer, etc., etc. So those are called port limits. So each country declare your own port limits. But obviously, you can only declare port limits within your own territories. You cannot be drawing port limits into my land, for example. So it's up to you. You define your port limits. So despite our protests to Malaysia on their 1979 map and boundary, in 1987, Malaysia draw their Johor Bahru port limits, and it is this one. It follows strictly their own claim of the boundary, and then go up with the 1995 boundary with Singapore. So this was their 1987 port limits, which they published in 87, but in 1999 they made slight adjustments to it. So but both port limits, 87 or 99, they kept it within their claimed national boundaries. So that's the significance of that one. Countries, as I said, are free to define your port limits and also, time to time, adjust it. Why do you adjust it? Because sometimes that is necessity. Because sometimes the port expand their activities, and therefore they ask, and then the state agrees, then they provide a bigger port limits. So adjustments, amendments to port limits, nothing extraordinary about it. But of course, you have to publicize it. You don't need to get approval from your neighbors because it is within your territories. And that is the bottom line. You can only define port limits within your own boundaries. Chart number 3. Now, but before that, maybe I just one more point on chart number 2. This, I said, it was published in 87 and then slightly amended in 99. The 1999 port limits remain intact, in fact, for more than 20 years, until recently, with the October 25th incident. So until October 25th, for more than 20 years, this is the Johor port limits. So therefore, it is clear, together with their claim lines, this side is Malaysian waters, this side is Singapore waters. So now let's see chart number 3. So until October 25th, which was just a few weeks ago, in October 25th, out of the blue, they decided to gazette and therefore declare that they wanted to change their port limits and they wanted to expand it. And they expand eastwards. And as you know, their port limits follow their claimed boundary. And when they expand eastwards, means expand where? Expand to Singapore water. Yeah. And this is their October 28 port limits. The new increment, the addition, is the shaded areas, which clearly is Singapore waters. It is Singapore water. For more than 20 years, we have exercised jurisdiction over these areas. We patrol, our security vessels patrol this area. We do it all the time, and whenever there are intrusions, we chase them away, we protest, we enforce. This is our area. They knew our activities, they meaning Malaysia. They are familiar with our activities for more than 20 years. They never protested. They never make a claim on this area. This is our waters. But now, October 25th, they decided to cross their own claim boundaries into Singapore waters and claim this as their waters. So clearly, this is a serious, huge violation of our sovereignty, of international law. This is blatant provocation, And next chart. We protested, of course. So October 25th, they gazetted the new port limits. November the 5th, we sent them a TPN, a third-party note, protesting against this deed and requesting them to immediately restore to pre-October status quo, cancel the new expansion gazette, and so on. That was November the 5th. November the 9th, me and my counterpart, Anthony Lok, happened to be in Bangkok. We were attending the ASEAN Transport Ministers meeting. I alerted him to this issue, and made the same request. So, unfortunately, despite all the various protests, they went further. Sometime in November, the Malaysian Marine Department issued what we call port circulars and notice to mariners. These are circulars and documents that is sent to ports, typically sent to the shipping community to inform them that, hey, immediately my port limits are now like this. We made a second protest to tell them to withdraw those circulars, that because this is our waters. But the escalation continued. And in fact, for example, the last 2 weeks, Malaysian government vessels have been making intrusions into this space, which is our water, cross their boundary, which they claim as their boundary, into our waters. To date, there have been 14 intrusions. Each dot represents one of the government vessels. Yeah. If you count, you can count 13 vessels, but there's one which is slightly outside of this area. But there were 14 intrusions. We systematically issued 3 more TPNs to protest against these intrusions. Yeah. Our security, agencies are enforcing this area, informing them, telling them, to get out, move away, and so on. Against all these aggressions, we have been extremely restrained, but I think we have a job to do. That this is our territory, this is our water, and against your blatant violations, if need be, we will take more firm actions. If I will show you, I think some videos of some of the ships, and you will see how close they were, and also how close they are to our space, and how close to each ship. This particular Malaysian vessel has been there since December the 3rd, I think. Has been there since for several days, and even as we speak, continues to be there. So there are 2 Malaysian vessels right now. Sorry, there are 3 Malaysian vessels currently in our waters. Okay, yeah, next chart. So in view of this recent development and their provocative actions, we have decided to gazette and expand our port limits. Let me take you through. This is our agreed boundary with Malaysia in the north. This was the line that they drew that they drew as what they claim to be their national boundary, we have now decided to draw our Singapore port limits, which used to be here, westwards into this area, which is our area. So we are expanding our port limits by this shaded area. But unlike the Malaysian adjustments, ours is within our own territorial waters. Yeah. As I said just now, it is normal for countries to adjust port limits, but you must do so within your own boundaries. And this is the case in our case. So the Gazette is out, I think, yeah, and will take immediate effect. It will take immediate effect, yeah. Anything else? If not, I'll sit down, yeah. We will have a panel, but let me make some comments before we open the floor for Q&A. Yesterday, Malaysia issued a media statement arguing that Singapore cannot claim the area as its territorial waters on the basis of its reclamation works in Tuas in recent years. But in 1979, when Malaysia published its map, it never consulted Singapore before drawing its territorial claim line. And in fact, in 1979, no reclamation at Tuas had taken place. So just now when I show you the first chart, the map, for completeness, I show you the reclamation profile of Tuas. But of course, at that point in time when Malaysia drew that boundary, no such reclamations were done at all. Yeah. So the Malaysian unilateral territorial claim of 1979, which we never recognized, could not possibly have taken into account any reclamation by Singapore. Their new JB port limits extends beyond Malaysia's own territorial claim line, and Malaysian ships have crossed this line to enter Singapore waters. Yesterday, Malaysia also replied to our first TPN issued a month earlier, which was on November the 5th. In their reply, Malaysia disagreed that the altered Johor port limits have encroached on Singapore territorial waters off Tuas, and emphasized that the Malaysian government vessels were patrolling the territorial waters of Malaysia. Malaysia's reply also proposed that officials from the two sides meet to work towards an amicable resolution. Singapore naturally agrees to this, and we will follow up. In fact, it has always been our view, ever since Malaysia published its first map in 1979, that the boundary line in this area can only be settled in accordance with international law and practice, through consultations between the governments involved. Meanwhile, Malaysian government vessels should immediately cease their intrusions and return to the status quo before October 25, 2018. Our security agencies will continue to patrol the area and respond to unauthorized activities on the ground. They have so far responded with restraint against aggressive actions by the Malaysian government vessels. But Singapore cannot allow our sovereignty to be violated or new facts on the ground to be created. Therefore, if it becomes necessary, we will not hesitate to take firm actions against intrusions and unauthorized activities in our waters to protect our territory and sovereignty. This violation of Singapore's sovereignty is a serious new issue in our bilateral relations with Malaysia. Singapore seeks friendly relations and close cooperation with Malaysia. In fact, Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir has just visited Singapore in November. He held fruitful discussions with our Prime Minister Lee. PM Lee flagged this issue with PM Mahathir as one that could affect our bilateral relationship. Unfortunately, further developments since then have made the situation more serious. Our position with Malaysia has always been clear and consistent. We uphold international law, we respect bilateral agreements, And we will protect and defend Singapore's territorial sovereignty. Singapore will not hesitate to take firm action against intrusions and unauthorized activities in our waters. Personally, I'm greatly saddened by this sudden turn of events. I've been in government service now for more than 40 years. I couldn't help feeling a sense of deja vu. When I negotiated or discussed the high-speed rail project with Minister Asmin Ali a few months ago, I had a very distinct feeling that the younger ministers in Malaysia do want a fresh relationship with Singapore without any past baggage, because there's so much we can gain working together. I think one of them told me that their own rakyat look forward to a new future without the shadow of the past. And I told him, yes, my own residents in Sembawang said the same thing to me. There's now an opportunity. So many years have passed since independence of Singapore and separation from Malaysia. There's so much we can work together. The regional market, the global market, is so huge, whether it's tourism, manufacturing, logistics, even transport hubs. The region needs many hubs. There are many ways we can work together. If with goodwill, with mutual respect, we can grasp all those opportunities. So my own sense is, I think the citizens on both sides of the causeway do expect their younger leaders on both sides to share similar views, to be able to work on jointly win-win projects together and create a brighter win-win future. And that is why, on the high-speed rail project, we chose not to utilize the full legal extent of the bilateral agreement which is accorded to Singapore. Instead, we sat down, thought through what exactly are their concerns and constraints, and creatively work out an alternative way to allow Malaysia to defer the high-speed rail project, and all in a spirit of bilateral cooperation. Nevertheless, I remain optimistic. We still want to seek good bilateral relations and hope we can work together to find an amicable solution to these issues. But Singaporeans have to be fully aware of all these developments. While we seek cooperation and friendship with other countries, we must never let other countries take advantage of us. When our national interests are challenged, we have to quietly and firmly stand our ground, and importantly, stay united as one people. I'll be happy to take any questions. With me, Permsec Transport and the CEO of MPA. Yeah. Anybody, please? Yes. We will, of course, so that because I may not remember all your three questions. Yeah, okay. We will, of course, working quietly, hoping that good sense will prevail, and then we'll be able to resolve these issues. So issuing TPN and trying to meet up, which we did, to try to resolve them. That was what we were trying to do. Anyway, as I show you, all this started October 25th, or just a few weeks before. But once, when these things became, you see, the waters, you can actually, for those, if you can see it, if you happen to be nearby, whether on the boat or taking the second link, it is so close, as you can see from the video and the photo. Yeah. What was your second question? Yeah.
My second question is, you spoke about how the Malaysian side have been aggressive. Perhaps you can elaborate in details, how aggressive they were. And to follow up on this, should they not leave Singapore waters, what will Singapore's next course of actions be?
No, as I said, our security agencies are there. They exercise restraint against all kinds of aggressions. The aggressions are clear. They should not be there. These are government officials. This is our waters. They should not be there. So when they come, we told them, give them warning, sound warning, and so on. And you can see from the video just now how close they came to our ships. Our security agency knows what to do. I think we'll leave it in their capable hands. But as I said, we will continue to exercise restraint. Hopefully, good sense will prevail. But if necessary, we have to be firmer. We will. So the best next step, I think, for them, leave our waters. It's as simple as that. We can talk. They talk about asking us for a meeting, which we will follow up. But immediately is leave our waters. Restore, go back to the status quo before October 25th. What is your last query?
Basically, what will Singapore's course of actions be if the vessels continue to remain?
I thought I already answered you. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Karam from the Straits Times.
Yeah.
I just want to understand a bit more the decision made to extend the boundaries of the Singapore port limits. What really is the significance of that? Because it's within Singapore territorial waters.
Yes.
So is there a signal that you're sending to the Malaysians? What is the significance of that particular move?
Now, first, adjusting port limits is not unusual. People do it. In this case, yes, it is in a way in a reaction to this provocative action on the part of Malaysia. But we do it properly in accordance with international law and certainly not infringe other people's, your neighbors' rights. So that is what we are doing.
Okay, may I just ask one more question? So you talked a bit about the whole high-speed rail issue and then the whole water issue, the Crooked Bridge, the airspace issue, and now the maritime issue. Do you see this as isolated incidents, or is there something bigger at play here that could be more concerning than the individual incidents that we've talked about? And sorry, and you talked about past baggage as well. Is this past baggage at play? So if you could elaborate on that.
I don't wish to. I think you can draw your own conclusion and so on. But for this afternoon, I want to focus and explain what exactly is happening on this JP port limits. Is there a pattern? I hope not. But having been in service for so many years, I can't help. That's why I said I have this sense of the feeling of deja vu. But I hope not, because my looking forward is I always hope and take an optimistic approach, and which was the approach I took with Minister Asmin Ali. Because of the high-speed rail discussions, I got to know him quite well, because we have so many opportunities, meeting casually, informally, as well as formally, and working through problems. And I could sense, and with him as well as some of his younger colleagues, there is this sense that I think the world is changing, our voters are changing, their aspirations, their expectations are different. Why must we pursue a destructive path? Beggar thy neighbor. What for? When if we work together, there are so many things we can achieve together. Enlarge the cake. It benefits our people. It benefits your rakyat. Isn't that a much better future? And it's possible. And it's possible. So I'm optimistic. Yes.
Hi, Minister. Xing Hui from Zaobao here. I have two questions. The first one is one, I guess, factor that resulted in that contributed to this is the fact that Singapore did not gazette our territorial waters back then for this particular area. could you share with us what were the reasons that caused this failure to gazette this area? That's the first question. Thanks.
No, there was never any failure, because you publish your lines when you have settled. So just as the northern parts of the Johor Straits, you have to negotiate and then you settle those boundaries. The southern part with Indonesia took us quite some time. So when we concluded the negotiation, you publish. But this area, because the Malaysians published their line, which we disagree, we will continue to disagree. So until you sit down and settle, it is unsettled. But even if you just look at what they have published as their claims, it is quite clear whose waters is this on this side, which they have now claimed to be their port limits. And that's why I said I think it's a very blatant action on their part.
Or maybe I'll phrase it another way. If that's the case, that it remains unsettled for the past few decades, then I'm wondering why were there no attempts to discuss this?
There are many neighboring countries where boundaries are not defined yet fully. It is quite common. It is quite common. Even at this point as we talk, there are certain parts of boundary with Indonesia which is not just settled. And all these things, this process take a long time.
Thank you. And Minister,
that's part of the reason why when it's unsettled, then at least you come to some common understanding. And that's why for more than 20 years, at least as early as 1999, or more than 20 years, 1999, it was quite clear. Malaysians know this is our water, this is their waters, and they knew our actions. They did not put a claim on these waters. They never protest about our actions because they know this is our water. It's as simple as that.
Right. And Minister, and both leaders of both countries are scheduled to hold the leaders' retreat soon. Do you think this would be something that would be discussed then? Thanks.
I'm quite sure. There are many topics to discuss. As I said, even at the last time when Dr. Mahathir visited us a few weeks ago, this topic, PM Lee raised this, alerted him to this issue, that potentially this can be a difficult issue. So let us manage it properly, and hopefully good sense will prevail.
Minister Khaw Boon Wan from Channel 8.
Hi. Sorry. Maybe we can Chao Bao first, or where are you? I can't hear. I heard something, but I can't see you. Huh?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead first.
Okay, Minister, just from Khaw Boon Wan from Channel 8.
Yes.
If the issues cannot be resolved, is there any way of a third-party kind of international organization that we can look forward to for arbitration?
I think we should try to resolve it bilaterally, even before you think about bringing in third parties. But key point is, I think let's do it professionally, do it with mutual respect, and good sense, I'm sure, will prevail.
Sorry, the second question is, have you all noticed if the Malaysian Navy are also already in that area?
Not that I know of.
Yes.
I'm
coming back to...
I can't see you.
Pek Ming from Business Times.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Coming back to questions, paragraph 14 and 15 again. 14, you said it's a reaction to the latest action by the Malaysian side, right?
Yes.
So what do you hope to achieve with this move? That's question number one. Do you want to respond to that first?
I think this is our waters. It allows us much more effective enforcement of our waters here. You see, port limits, as I explained to you, are working areas for the shipping industry. How big, how small the port limits, it all depends on how big is your activities. If you have a very busy port, then you expand, you progressively expand. Or the port activities shrink or go down, decline, you reduce it. Because there's a cost to the government deciding that this stretch of water, I set it aside for the port. That means it cannot be used for anything else other than port activities. So that's why port limits do not coincide with boundaries. Meaning we do not allocate the whole boundary to be a port. If this is the amount that you need, and then so that's how we define the port limits. But in this instance, when with all this provocation the last few weeks, we make this decision that we will expand our port, to cover this area.
The second question is the 15.
Yeah.
You said this is a serious new issue. How different is it from the past?
Yeah, it's a new issue. Yeah, why?
So how different is it? How new is it? How different is it from the past issues of that?
I mean, new in the sense that it's different from, say, water, it's different from airspace. It's a new issue. Yeah. We have. We have not encountered this particular port limits violations before. Yep.
Minister Nicholas from Yahoo. You mentioned that there are 3 government Malaysian vessels that are currently in our waters. I'm just wondering how have they responded when our security agencies have asked them to leave? And are we expecting more intrusions besides the 14 intrusions?
I hope not. That's why my main message today is that I think let's back off. Leave our waters, and while we pursue sit-down dialogues and to try to resolve it.
And how have the vessels responded when our agencies asked them to leave?
Well, a couple of them are still there. So we will see. Yeah. Anything else?
Minister, I'm Teck Ming from Sao Paulo. Actually, I just want to clarify. You showed the video and you said the vessels are very close, dangerously close. Is there an idea actually how close that was so that we can better understand the severity of it?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the closest intrusions that we have on record is about a kilometer away. About a kilometer away. 1 kilometer. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Minister, I have 2 additional questions.
Yes.
You already issued a gazette. How do you ensure that the ships comply to the Singapore government's gazette?
We will enforce.
Will you monitor? And what if the ships
We do that all the time. We monitor these waters, not just now, for 24 hours. Yeah.
And what if the ships, still, comply?
We have to comply. They must comply. Yeah.
And my second
These are
question.
waters. Yeah.
And my second question is just to follow up on an earlier question. I mean, you have these 5 major issues that have cropped up since the Mahathir-led Pakatan Harapan government took power in May.
What 5 major issues?
You have the water prices, you have the HSR.
It's your own compilation.
This, yes, we did compile, Minister, and
Okay.
They have cropped up since the new government took power. So the question, like my colleague put forth, is how concerning is it that when they face domestic pressures, Singapore is being used as an external bogeyman of sort?
I suppose that's your speculation, is it? Yeah, I'll just note it. Yeah, I hope not. Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether all that's happening out there has had any impact on shipping activities. It's very close to the Malacca Strait. Is there any concern from that perspective, as far as MPA is concerned? And also, another question, if I may, it's also very near the Tuas development. Are you concerned that this could impact the development of the Tuas port?
All this happened in the last few weeks, and I hope it can be resolved speedily. If they leave the waters and do not continue the violations, then we go back to status quo. As I said, the best arrangement going forward is go back to pre-October 2018 status quo.
So far there's been no impact on shipping activities along the...
Not visible. Not visible. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Maybe we have one last question and that's it. Yeah.
So according to media reports, Minister Anthony Loke from Malaysia said that actually is in accordance to international law that the territorial sea of Singapore remains unchanged even with the reclamation that has been carried out. And he said that so the altered port limits of Johor Bahru port are in Malaysia's territorial sea and it's well within Malaysia's right to draw any port limit in our territorial sea according to our own international law. So is there any response to what Minister Loke mentioned to the media?
I thought I did so. You got my statement, right?
Yes. That is according to the note they published, right? So it's actually the same thing that you are responding to?
Yes, yes, indeed. My paragraph 9 is the reply to his suggestion. Okay, thank you very much.